Welcome to Uncover the Human, where every conversation revolves around enhancing all the connections in our lives.
Whether that's with our families, co-workers, or even ourselves.
When we can be our authentic selves, magic happens. This is Alex Cullimore.
And this is Cristina Amigoni.
Let's dive in.
This episode includes our interpretations of copyrighted works done by the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, or iPEC. Welcome back to this episode of Uncover the Human. We are continuing our series where we're dissecting some of our thoughts on iPEC's core dynamic series. So the core dynamic series, if you know, it goes through some of the influences on our energy, and now we are into the disciplines that we can practice to achieve some mastery and understand better satisfaction and just good practices in general for life. So we are on, I believe, the fourth discipline now. Is this
third?
Fourth.
Yeah.
Yes, third.
Third.
Counting was not
awareness,
my major. I did theoretical math
and conscious choice.
Yes, which is a really good. The first four especially really kind of go in line. All of them play off each other a little bit, but these first four are really good. You can kind of think of them in a linear way. You can be aware of a problem, then you accept what are the realities, and knowing the realities that you're facing, you go into this one, which is the discipline of conscious choice. So conscious choice here. There's a great quote that I like from Carl Jung that until you make the subconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And that is just a good way of thinking about all of our default behaviors. And we have all of them. We are built in with so many defaults and so many things that we've learned without being more conscious about what we are choosing to do. And so conscious choice is kind of our mechanism to get into that space where we're making choices that aren't just the default reactions, but more the responses that we want to choose.
Yes, indeed. I think conscious choice is one of my favorite disciplines. And it's mainly because it doesn't give you a chance to get off the hook. It after acceptance, once you accept that things are the way they are, and you release some of the judgment around it, you accept how you react to things, how you may not react to these conscious choices. It's really that, interestingly enough, it's realizing that you do have control in what happens, and consciously choosing is how you get that control without being attached to the control. So it's a little bit of a cycle in the conscious choice, but it's it gives power. It also makes it very obvious when we're not making decisions based on conscious choice, when it's unconscious choicing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when you notice it in other people, I find that it increases empathy and grace, because it's a little easier to not take things personally or to not judge as harshly when you look at decisions and reactions made based on unconscious choice.
Yeah. Especially when you start to see those strong reactions that you don't know where they come from. Somebody you've known for a while suddenly has like a outsized seeming reaction to something. I think this is a great discipline for understanding that there's some trigger there. You understand that some button has been pushed and they are launching out of some subconscious place or unconscious place, which we all do from time to time. No matter how much we practice this, we're all going to have a lot of unconscious choice. But knowing that about other people helps you understand, like you're saying, not taking it personally, and understand that like that person has a set of defaults. I have a set of defaults. Getting curious about what your own defaults are, as well as what other people's could be, is a great way of increasing your own empathy, curiosity, and a good way to deepen some connections.
Yes. Yeah. And the dichotomy, I find that it's also, as you increase connections, you also become very clear with the connections that you may not want to have in your life as much anymore, because of that understanding of the conscious part of the choice. It's the understanding of the consciousness. And so then you look at situations and relationships and people and decides to choose what's worth my energy. And do I want to live surrounded by less consciousness or lower consciousness? I don't like the word lower because it implies some sort of ladder and hierarchy. But less conscious choices and more reactions, or do I not? And in those cases, what does that look like? There's my conscious choice in play. Is how much do I want to be around consciousness and acceptance and awareness and decisions that are made from a place of understanding and non-judgment and grace and empathy versus a place of, in a way, finite game and looking at things as zero-sum games, or even looking at things as a competition. As in, if I do this, or if I give this credit, then that's taken away from me.
Yeah. And some of that integrity of am I putting forward what I say I'm going to put forward?
Yes.
Am I going to be around the people who will do that or not? And that's a great example. Your example is like a meta on conscious choice, because it's an example of conscious choice while describing conscious choice. It's and those questions you asked yourself, what is worth my time? How much am I going to put my energy into this? That's all key elements of making conscious choice. We are doing this based on understanding of what all of the information is available to us. So again, going back to that acceptance piece of really accepting all of the reality that is at our hands and what our reactions are and what we might want to have happen and what we might be aiming for. That's when we start to make more conscious choices. Instead of reacting, we go into response. And there's a kind of good section here where they talk about responsibility. Like it sounds like responsibility, but it's response-ability. What is your ability to respond in this moment? How close are you to being able to make an actual conscious choice? How much are you being influenced by subconscious bias? And where are you on that scale? And knowing like what could put you in a better place that where you can be able to respond instead of feeling like you are in a reaction space. And once you start to get aware of those times when you are reacting versus you are responding, it becomes pretty addictive to see what you can do more consciously. What can you be more aware of, and what would you like to do? And it takes a lot of effort, and like all the practices, they get a little easier over time, but it's a continual practice. You have to apply it every time.
Yeah. I love the responsibility and the tie to integrity. And maybe that's why conscious choice is one of my favorite disciplines. Having integrity as a high up on my values or my core values, and one that we were just speaking offline, how I really, I have a physical reaction to when I see things out of integrity around me, because it's such a strong value. And conscious choice is when you can truly choose that integrity, is when you can choose what you're going to say because you know you're going to follow through, as opposed to just saying what you may think needs to be said to be liked or to be accepted or to keep the peace, or all the other reasons why you may want to say something or not say something. And so the conscious choice really plays very well into integrity, because you're not just making a choice on your action, but you're making a choice of your words. You're making a choice of how you show up. You're making a choice when you don't speak or show up and what happens there. Hopefully you make that choice. And when you don't, it becomes very obvious that you didn't. And so then you can look for a chance to make it up, or you can remember for the next time.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, because there is so much conscious choice in creating our own reputation. If we have a reputation for being reactive, we're probably not doing a lot of conscious choosing, or that is where our default lies. And we can start to dissect the ideas a little bit between a conscious and a subconscious choice by thinking of these in terms of things like a fear-based choice versus a purpose-based choice. When we're being driven in our heads by all kinds of language like, I have to do this, I need to do this, I should do this, that might be pushing on some kind of fear. It might be that we are trying to avoid something or believe we have to be something that we aren't, or feel like we're not good enough yet. Whereas if we're more in the purpose-based choice, we might be accessing some things that align with our values and feeling like this is something that I am choosing because it is important to me. And I want to do this, are the kind of things that might come out. If it might be a need to, but not that, oh, I need to do that. It's, I need to do that. I need to be part of this. I feel compelled to do this, rather than, oh yeah, I need to work out more often. Like that's an easy go-to example of, like, we all know that we technically probably need to, but are we actually feeling like we want to? Are we in the place where we're making the conscious choice to do that? It's great to kind of investigate our own language, as well as the language we start to hear from others, when we can start to parse out whether they're in a more conscious place or a more unconscious place in their decisions.
Yes. The language is key, I think, for conscious choice. The language in our heads, the language that we use with others, and we also hear from others. using needs, have to, should, instead of I choose to. It's a big difference. And in coaching, we definitely bring that up fairly often when we're talking to someone who shares something that they want in the future, but they may be using the languages, they may be using the words have to, need to, should. And so understanding, how can that be shifted to I choose to do that, or I choose not to do that. And then you can really get to the core of, is this an external driven idea, or is this an internal desire? And until it becomes an internal desire, there's really no conscious choice possible to move and walk into growth and walk into learning. If we look at even a comfort to growth scale, fear is very much of a have to, need to, should. If you want to be learning and in growth, it's important to move to the I choose to do this.
Yeah. They're all different forms of internal resistance of I don't want to do this yet. I don't have time to do this. I can't do that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be part of this new thing, whatever that is. It's some kind of fear or some kind of, I'm going to just stay where I'm comfortable. I don't want to do this. And those are the things when we really investigate it, we can figure out what's an excuse in our mind and what's really in the way, and what is and what can we do to address it. Because again, there will be obstacles when we try and do things or try and grow. So what are our conscious choices around those obstacles? What are we going to do when we hit those? If we're immediately hit an obstacle and we're like, well, I guess I tried that, maybe it wasn't that important to us, or maybe we're letting that be bigger than it needs to be. And so getting to this conscious choice is incredibly powerful, because otherwise you might not find out whether this is something you should stop or something you should find a way around this obstacle for.
Yeah, one of my favorite things about honing into conscious choice and getting there is, well, I guess I have two, so not one, but two of my favorite things are, one is to actually walk through that hypothetical experience in your head. So creating the movie. I create movies for pretty much everything. So create the movie of choosing something, and then seeing, which is the second step, is seeing how it feels physically. Like, is your body reacting in any way to having that image, that movie in your mind of the experience that hasn't happened yet? And that, in my experience, is very telling of something that either feels like a should or a have to or a need to, and whether it is possible to move it to a choose to, or to move it to a choose not to. But if I picture that experience as if it were happening at the moment, the way I expect it to be happening, then I can dissect how's my body feeling, what sensations come up, where do I get blocked, what seems too big or too small, where are the gaps, and where are the choices, what choice do I actually have that's in my control.
I really like that you also put in there that you choose to and choose not to, because choosing not to do something is equally conscious choice, as long as you are conscious of making that. And it can be at least as liberating as making a choice to do something, because you're committing yourself to starting it, or to not having to have it ruminate and sit in your mind about, maybe I should do that, maybe I shouldn't do that, maybe I should do that, maybe I shouldn't do that. If you choose actively and consciously not to do it, you can liberate yourself from that little mental cycle and free up that for the next thing that you do want to do, or the other parts. And there is this opportunity cost in our mindsets. If we don't make a choice, we're still costing ourselves mental cycles, which takes away from other choices. And that's why conscious choice is so powerful and present in what we can do. And if we can be present and we can be conscious, we can have a totally different scope of purview on how we're going to engage with life. And it comes very much on the tails of the other two disciplines, because you can really get into that space of acceptance of everything that is, so that you can make the best conscious choice and know what really is in your control and not. There are things that aren't, and there are a lot of things that we tell ourselves aren't, but might be if we change some factors in our lives.
Indeed. All right. Should we get coaching?
Yes, but this time you have to decide whether you're coaching first or not. I'm not taking this grenade on.
So this time I have to make a conscious choice.
Yes, I made a conscious choice to punt that question.
And then I can't complain that I don't like the choice.
I mean, you can.
Well, yeah.
There's no saying you can't. You can consciously choose to do that.
I can consciously choose and then regret my choice. I will be the client.
All right. Okay. Well, let's start
I'm
by
about to regret that. Let's see how fast I regret that choice.
I'm not gonna, dig in on the not the way we did for acceptance. That one we really went immediately in. I don't even have an immediate question for conscious choice. No, okay. Here's a fun one.
Oh, here we go.
I take it back. Thank you for the challenge.
Regret is starting to sit in right away. How conscious was my choice?
Maybe you did want to do this. Maybe subconsciously you wanted to be in the hot seat.
Yeah.
But think of let's say let's look at what's maybe an area of your life where you feel like you might not be applying conscious choice. That
is that the end of the question? Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I trailed on that one.
Well, it's an easy answer with the difficult realization, but it's an easy answer. I would say family is probably one of the hardest places of conscious choice on a daily basis in every single action. Yeah, that's the end of my answer there.
Oh, what do you mean when you say family? What kind of choices?
Oh, I think there's so much that goes on inside the household that it's on autopilot with kids. Whether it's, there's always a million things to do, especially, like I say most women will probably relate to have a family, or even most women just that in the household, that we have a constant running list of 1,757 things. It's very specific numbers. and so the default is really the autopilot on that. Do the laundry, make sure the kids have clothes, get them to do their laundry if that's the situation, put away their clothes, and get ready for school and keep up with all the school stuff and look at the calendar and make sure the calendar is all set up. And so then there's so many logistical pieces to keep on top of all the time that it also becomes a little bit difficult, or at least for me, it's a lot more difficult to then know when to slow down, to apply conscious choice into my responses when things don't go as planned, or when there's an area of frustration, or when the kids need more than just a drill sergeant. Not that I am one, but need more than just the autopilot, do this, this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, and let's get you out the door. But when there's a moment of needing to be heard, when maybe there's a moment of being hurt or being confused, being anxious, and more emotionally impactful moment, sometimes I find myself continuing the autopilot of the things to do and where we need to be and what's next, and not actually pausing to listen, to empathize, to meet them where they are, and just wanting it to be over because there's still the 1,755 items on the list that haven't been addressed.
Well, at least you got two of them off the list before.
I know. I forgot if I said 56 or 57.
1757. That's the number of choices going ahead at all times.
Okay. Yes.
1,757 things going on.
The sad thing is that I probably could come up with 1,757 things in my head at one time.
And we could do that on the podcast right now, or
make a conscious choice to continue coaching.
or we could do that. So when you think about that, you mentioned like one of the motives that might be driving that, where you just kind of stay in that autopilot, is that there's this laundry list of other things that you have to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Laundry list is probably a bad turn of phrase in this one, since laundry's probably on the list often. So
laundry is on the list.
In this laundry list, which includes laundry of things, there's that pressure. You know that you're gonna have to like reconfigure the entire plan if it kind of gets delayed on this. Would you say that? Well, what other motives, if any, come up that might be pushing that, or feel like you want to stay on that autopilot?
I would say the wanting to be past the list of the moment so that I can go back to what I want to do and how I want to spend my time.
Mhm.
That's probably the biggest obstacle to pausing and approaching things with conscious choice, is when we look at time and we realize it's finite in some ways, and we have a plan in our head on how that time was going to be spent, and a curveball comes in that we don't necessarily want to acknowledge at the moment, because it's going to disrupt what we thought was going to happen and how we thought we were going to spend the rest of the day, the rest of the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that absolutely makes sense, to have the worry be like this is going to cut into all kinds of plans, and that, if you only have X amount of time to find the things that you want to do and enjoy to do, which we all only have finite amounts of time to do that, then that absolutely could cut into that. And so you're now facing down the barrel of the consequences that are far reaching beyond the immediate scenario that might be coming up. So it makes sense that would feel like it's just colliding with it. It's like a train that's backing up. There's just goes into all the other parts of your day. So given that that there's other things you might want to get to, first of all, let's talk a little awareness. What comes up for you? How do you notice? How can you notice when you're being tempted to stay on the autopilot, or when that resistance is coming up?
I notice it pretty quickly. I would like to believe that in the last few years, it doesn't happen as often. There has to be a lot going on for me to stay on the autopilot and then get off the track remarkably badly, until I realize where we are. I think physically, it's probably one of the first sensations. And physically, I would say my body tenses up, and I don't breathe as deeply, so breath speeds up. I start getting really attached to what I thought I wanted things to be and how I thought I wanted the time to be spent. And that cycle, saying it out loud, it seems like it takes a long time, but I have noticed how it's shorter and shorter lately, in the last few years, especially, where it's really fractions of seconds. And sometimes it's not. Sometimes I go completely off the rail and I have to come back. But most of the times, it's fractions of seconds of just going through the whole cycle of what am I attached to? What am I afraid of losing? What am I grieving if I do this? And then being able to be in a place of making the conscious choice of what's more important. What is priority here? Is going for a walk right now, is that the priority, or is being here for my kid a priority? And how quickly can I go into realizing that the walk was a wish and it was something I wanted to do, and it's okay if I do it later, if I do it another day. This is the most important priority. I would say values, and it goes back to values like a lot of times. So going back to like which value is what, and which value is the most important at the moment, and which value am I going to go against if I don't listen to the deeper choices I have, and if I don't listen to what's actually going on and I just react.
Yeah, it's great awareness. And I assume, based on just how you've talked about it in the past and what you've talked about, that a lot of the mindfulness and meditation work you've done may help with shortening that. So you're very aware of the thoughts. And it sounds like you're also, if you were to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, when you're entering into these zones, and you feel like there's now suddenly a choice being put in front of you where you're going to have to like change the plan, or make a conscious choice to allow the plan to change. If you're thinking on you're talking about how you get to, at that point, prioritize things where you're trying to decide which one's the most important priority now. In generally speaking, for these situations, how clear do you feel on your priorities going into a moment like that? 1 being not clear at all, 10 being it feels fairly clear.
It really depends on the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how much time I spend on the first two disciplines, awareness and acceptance. So if I actually stop and not shortcut it and go through the awareness of how am I feeling, what am I feeling, what's happening here, what are my choices, and then the acceptance to not really judge my need or my desire to not want to have this conversation right now because I really wanted to go for a walk. And just accept that what I'm feeling, it's perfectly okay. Okay, accept the situation, accept my values. The more I pause to actually go through those cycles, the more I'm able to make the conscious choice and be at peace with it and understand what the priorities are at the moment. And also, which is also very much part of the acceptance, accepting that each situation is going to be different. So there isn't a playbook.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't something that says every time it's sunny outside and my kid wants blah, 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 and I am planning to go for a walk, this is the response.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends on, I would say, the more I think about it, it really comes down to energy. If I let all the noise of the 900 washing machine words in my head go, and I go deep into what my intuition is telling me and what feels right, I will know the answer. And I don't have to know why it feels right. I don't have to justify it. I don't have to, come up with a soapbox presentation and data points. I just have to feel it in my heart and at the pit of my stomach, and I'll know what needs to be done.
That's great insight. And that makes sense that it would go back to what is really core necessary right then, which is going to inherently be different per situation and for whatever energy you're feeling at the time. So what are ways that might help you get into that space where you're hearing that intuition?
Good question. Definitely pausing, not trying to shortcut. I'd say that shortcutting into a reaction, it's never conscious choice, at least not for me. I mean, there's no getting to conscious choice if we're just reacting all over the place. I mean, it goes back to the quote that you mentioned at the beginning. It's if we let the subconscious just take the wheel, well, the subconscious is going to drive us wherever the hell it wants. And then good luck, getting out of the car or, taking the wheel back. So there has to be a lot of not letting that happen as much and getting used to how that feels like. Again, when not perfect, it's going to happen, and it's going to happen often, and it's going to happen daily. But the more we're conscious when it happens, the more we can actually realize what happened. Why did we let that go? Why did we hand over not just the wheel, but the car keys and our driver's license and not really make that step to stop it? And so, and not judge ourselves. So not judge myself when that happens. It's going to happen, and that's completely acceptable. And maybe we can look for patterns. And that pattern could be I didn't sleep well last night, or that pattern could be there's something else that I'm worried about that could also be a big influencer. It's like if my mind is somewhere else and I'm concerned about something else, or something else triggered me or bothered me, then I am not present. And if I'm not present, then I just want to shortcut through reactions and just get over it and be on the other side.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of great insights in that. And you talked about that you might be able to see some patterns in that over time. How would you help yourself find patterns going forward?
One of the best exercises I've done in a long time. I strongly recommend it. And it was in a period a few years ago where I did a lot of internal work. I did a lot of inner work. There was definitely a lot of reactions and desire for conscious choice, but not understanding what was influencing, not being able to do that. A lot of internal disturbance, a lot of grief because of various situations. But I remember hearing and I wish I could remember his name, but I remember hearing an author of the guy that wrote The Third Door. And he mentioned how he would recommend it and did this exercise where for 30 days, he would write every day 3 things that gave him energy and 3 things that drained energy from him that day. And so I started doing that. And I actually did that. I journaled that for, I think it was over 90 days because I remember it was way past the 30 days. And what I started noticing in journaling was the patterns of what is it that drains me every day and what is it that energizes me every day. And so then once they were on paper, and obviously, and I wasn't going back to read every single day, but when you get into the habit of doing something like that, and you start writing the same thing over and over and over and over, by day 21, you're realizing like, I wrote this like 20 times already. Why is this thing that's draining me coming up over and over and over? And that's probably one of the most impactful exercises of conscious choice that I've had, because then I had a choice. It was there. It was black on white. What was draining me and what was energizing me. And so my choice was, do I want to do something about this? Or do I want to keep living on somebody else driving the wheel and complaining about this stuff?
So would it feel helpful to do another exercise like that now? How clear does the choice feel for you?
Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, I remember I started doing that. I don't know exactly when I heard the podcast. It was like February 20th, 2020. It was right before the pandemic. We were driving back from Aspen from a weekend skiing and seeing some friends. And so I started right away. And so it's been 3 years, I guess, since I have journaled that. And I think it would be very beneficial. I do journal. I still journal what I'm grateful for every day. So I get the 3 things, and I usually write things that energize me and what I'm grateful for. So I do the positive side of things, or the energizing part of it. I haven't actually journaled on what drains my energy since then, really. So I would be curious to find out what it is. But I also feel like my energy is not drained all that much. I'm able to pause or to end things that drain my energy, or to speak to a coach or a coach friend. As soon as I start noticing that something is draining my energy, I have to get it off my chest and just release it, get the empathy, and say goodbye to it. But it would be interesting to see what else comes up.
Yeah. Now, once again, you've showed a great understanding of your own practices that have brought you to this. It sounds like you've done a lot of work in conscious choice space, as well as just understanding what already brings you, and you already have the strategies to get yourself into those spaces when you start to realize what's draining your energy, reaching out to talk to friends, reaching out and having those conversations. Another thing we had talked about offline was, hey, when I know something's heavy enough, I know I'm just going to have to address this because I've been hit by the tsunami of not doing this too many times, which is another great thing to lean back on. Like, what are the experiences of not making this conscious choice if you're hesitating to make a conscious choice?
Yes, that's a very good point. It has become very powerful to not let things be when they don't feel right. It's just not. And on the other side of it, not everybody's ready to address things when I'm ready, which is pretty much right away. I have very little patience because I don't want to sit in that. I don't want to sit in the energy drainage. I don't want to sit in the weirdness. It's a big thing that we always say, talk about it before it gets weird. I don't want to sit in the weirdness without talking first. If it's going to get weird, let's get weird. And let's make sure that conversation actually happens, because the more we sit in it, the bigger it becomes. And I've also learned fairly recently that not everybody works at my own speed. And so being patient and allowing some time to go, and then keep checking in on, are things still feeling weird? Is the energy still weird? And what I have also learned is through reflection and through a lot of journaling, what drains my energy, and making those conscious choices to look at the demons and those hard moments, is if it feels weird, that's all I need. I don't need data. I don't need evidence. I don't need specifics. I don't need somebody else to agree that it does. it just does. And so then it either goes away by itself because it works itself out, or it gets addressed. And I've also learned that even if the weirdness goes away, it's still good for me to address that there was something there. And because you've been on the receiving end, when there's weirdness, I will send a text message when I feel like the weirdness is mostly gone. I'll be like, hey, everything good? Energy was a little off. Anything I need to know here so that I don't get blindsided?
I would hope to say there's been nothing blindsided, but there's certainly plenty of times where I've had other energetic influencers.
No, I don't usually get blindsided. But that's it. Like it's good or bad. It's hard for me to let go, even if it's past. I want to acknowledge whether what I picked up was correct or not, so that I can then be more conscious with, am I picking something up or not here? And checking in, just in case. Checking in does help, really, whatever may not have been said.
Also, I can say on the receiving side, that definitely helps just feel even more secure in the relationship, and just knowing that, like, hey, there's just genuine connection. It is a good exercise in that reaching out, just to reiterate that your general desire to have a strong and actual connection. So it is received well, at least on my end.
Oh, good.
So parting question then, that you've got kind of your desire would be to address these things as soon as possible. That sometimes that other people may not be in that space. What can you help tell yourself or use to give yourself the space to allow others, if you feel like you can't productively immediately address something?
I would say empathy helps a lot. And so allowing for grace, allowing for empathy, making the conscious choice to not take everything personally. And I'm not a big fan of that sentence because, well, we do take everything personally, that we're humans with emotions. The only way we can take it. And it's the only way we can take it. So there's nothing bad about taking things personally. However, the definition of taking things personally in the sense of making ourselves the fault to blame, or making it all about us. And sometimes it is, but not all the time. But it does help to step back and allow for the empathy and the grace of realizing that I don't know the full story, and I can't know the full story. And while I have a strong desire to understand the full story, it's not my story. And so I don't get to dictate the timing of it. But I do get to live my values of showing empathy, of showing grace, of communicating that I am here when it's time to share the story, if it gets there. And I also, my intuition of knowing that if the story never gets shared, but the weirdness doesn't go away, it still needs to be addressed.
Yeah, those are great observations and understanding of giving that space to yourself and to others. And it sounds like when you're talking about the not taking it personally, it's all about that there could be other stories, and not immediately believing the story that may most involve you or most cause the stress that feels like it's driven by you or your blame or fault or whatever might be coming up in your story.
Yes. Like I don't have to be the victim. I don't know that I am. Sometimes we are. Sometimes it is about us. Sometimes it fully is. And also, in those times when it really does feel like we are, believe it without the evidence, without the validation. Because as you mentioned, like the more I've avoided that in the past by saying like, well, I don't know the whole story, so it doesn't necessarily have to be about me. Well, it usually was, and I got hit pretty hard by that tsunami. And so there's a balance. It's a constant balance. So like not everything is about me. And yet when it feels deeply that it is, then believe it, and then figure out when and how can that be resolved or come out in the open, so that it can be addressed, and not just let it lurk in the dark and create all sorts of chicken and showers for the gremlins to have after midnight.
Such a visual image. Well,
Gremlin
we were at a
invasion.
crossroads. Would you like to take off the hot seat, or would you want to go a little deeper? It's your choice.
Nice choice of words.
It's your conscious choice, and truly, either is valuable here.
Well, let's get off my hot seat and switch.
All right, toss it my way then. But I do want to acknowledge just again, and I say this every time, but you come across this way. You've got great awareness of your own habits, energies, and the things that can help you change those, keep your influencers where you'd like them to be, and address the ones that you can address. Sure, all the whole point of all these influencers is sharing stories like this. So I appreciate you sharing those, and I appreciate you just being open about how you process those stuff. So I don't want that to go unsaid.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And no, it's not perfect all the time. Far from it. There's
Never.
a lot of like, I shouldn't have said that. Or I should have spoken up.
That's all right. I'm about to enter the hot seat, so I'm going to have like 50 shouldn't have said that's right after this conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah, just forget that we're recording. So
Ignore the studio audience.
yes. Let me see how to start this. This is a good one. So
Oh boy.
do you tend to lead with logic, intuition, or emotion more?
I think that it's hard to. I guess it would go back to how I would define lead. When I
That's a different podcast. We're going to talk about what leadership is in a different conversation.
That's another one coming up.
Yes.
No, I guess it's when I'm actually making a choice. I think for a long time I spent a long time in logic, and I would spend a lot of time ignoring both intuition and emotion. I'd try and like work into that. Actually, just this weekend, I was talking to somebody who was trying to decide between two different apartments of where they're going to move to, and they were like, "Well, yeah, my heart tells me this one, but my head tells me this one," and just it kind of fell out of me that I was like, "Well, then just do what your heart says. Your head is there to go figure out like how to make that work. Just use your head for that instead." And I kind of like that as an answer, and I'm finding myself more and more in recent months, especially leaning into that intuition and leading from that intuitive space. There's times when it's a big enough decision that I think even when I go pull in the emotional and logical components of whatever I'm feeling, I try and put a heavier weight on whatever the gut is telling me that there's something that I'm intuitively leaning towards, and I'll try and suss out maybe why that is, or what that gut feeling might be. But I try and give that heavier weight generally, because it's become easier to just lead with that, and it's rarely driven me off course, or at least to the point where I couldn't quickly make a course correction and be in a better place than I might want to be at.
Yeah, that's excellent awareness, especially when experiencing with somebody else and how they bring a choice, and how without even thinking, you share to go with the heart, and the head will figure out how to make it happen. And how you've kind of adopted that a lot more. So how do you, when you are faced with logic and intuition and what your heart is telling you versus what your mind is telling you, even without the verses, what your heart and minds are telling you in general, how do you distinguish which one is which?
To borrow the phrases that you were using, I notice it's intuition when it's just it's a feeling, not a reaction. Is I think emotionally it feels more like a reaction. Oftentimes I'll feel some anger or excitement or whatever of the 90 words that Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart divided that one into. Whatever one of those comes up, that's kind of the reaction, and that's good data. It's good. I'm getting better at listening to that and finding that and knowing that that's coming out. But intuition is where there's not. It's both a fully formed thought about what the action could be to take, and it is a feeling at the same time, if that makes sense. Because there's no data that backs it up. There's no immediate I want to do this because that would be an important thing in my 5-year plan, or but I don't have a 5-year plan, but like there's none of that. There's no
I am curious to
rationalizing.
find out what your 5-year plan for your heart is.
I would like it to still be beating.
It's a good plan.
I would like it to be beating healthily.
There you go. Sorry for that.
And as a stretch goal, I would like it to be beating at a good resting heart rate. That'd be nice. All of those just kept up for 5 years would be great. I'd be feel like I'm literally in good shape at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'll put my coach hat back on. Let's go back to
no, that's great.
Your 5-year plan.
You let me dawdle on laundry list, so I think we're okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I do. It makes sense to have that. It's a feeling. It's not a logic. It doesn't fit into a 5-year plan. You just know. You know, and it's not about justifying how you know or what you know and why you know. You just know.
Actually, to share on that one exercise that I found from a coach friend, and I had practiced a little bit actually before I'd heard it explicitly from her, but a great way to get in touch with your intuition is like when you go to a restaurant, or if you're trying to choose. For me, I was doing it when I was like choosing between restaurants. I was like, wait, do we want to go here or here? I'd just be like, okay, what's the initial just a pull? Like, I just listen for that pull, and I got better at just like feeling that, because it was like, yeah, I did end up at cart driver most of the time, but hey, that's where your intuition leads.
I think that's where your stomach is actually driving, not your heart.
Hey, it's
or your
a gut
head.
feeling.
Yes,
and sometimes that gut is really
feeling.
gastrointestinal gut. But the other one that she suggested is like when you're looking at the menu, like just what are you just saying you want? Like just what does your body like continue to go back for? What do your eyes continue to go back to? You're like, before you jump in there with everything like, that's heavier than I should eat, or all the shoulds and the have tos that we talk about. Like before all of that logic comes in, before the emotion of like, I'm not feeling that, I wouldn't feel good about that. Where's your intuition lead your eyes on the page is kind of a good practice of getting in touch with that.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I just wanted to share that one. I liked that one a lot.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good way. So when the head is very powerful, and we know that the head really tries to convince that it's what it's saying, it's what the gut and the heart is saying. How do you find yourself distinguishing when the head is helping you versus getting in the way of conscious choice?
So the interesting thing that I'm coming to when you ask that question is that it's when I say I lead with intuition, that is it. You have to consciously choose the intuition, I guess, is the real thing. If I was only going on subconscious impulse and the intuition, then it would be an unconscious choice. But when I think about like that, when the head's getting in the way, it's when it's fighting with that intuition. When I can feel myself rationalizing something that doesn't fit that intuition. When I've got like some leaning that like I really want to take the left path, and then my brain's telling you like telling me, well, that the right path looks well lit. The right path looks like there's all kinds of footprints over there, or there's whatever reason it is, and I still feel that gut feeling of like but I want to go left. And as long as I've parsed that out, and it's not just an immediate impulse, it's like just to go back to like the food thing, like an immediate impulse that might not be worth following is like, I'd love a large tiramisu right now. Like I probably shouldn't have all that all the time. Like I could be feeling that, and then get really in touch with the intuition of whether that's just an impulse or whether that's like literally the path that should be taken. And obviously, I think you're addressing more serious choices that might be made, and that's I kind of tell the difference when my head continues to try to rationalize something that doesn't feel right at the core. It's just it fights some kind of feeling, but I'm throwing like facts at it as if that's going to change it. When I can feel those two things, like trying to build some case for something that I fundamentally don't believe, that's when the head's getting in the way.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, for sure. So when you think about when the head gets in the way, or when you're able to listen to your heart, and also reflecting back on getting better at listening to the intuition and following the heart in those, what are some of the benefits you have noticed in your life?
It's it's been a huge game changer for relationships because I don't hold myself back from speaking up, which either I'm holding back from speaking up on something that's important, so it needs to be addressed, and so it'll create just a larger issue down the road, or I'm not really I'm not giving the other person a chance to know me, and then I feel like I'm holding up a mask all the time, and then that just gets exhausting, and that's just a weight on the relationship in general. So it's a different kind of problem that's building up. So like when I'm leaning into that intuition, where I'm just okay speaking up instead of trying to like think through whether this is the right thing to say right now, or and inevitably the moment will have passed long gone before I would have a chance to say anything anyway. Like there was so much cost to that, and I was present at work and meetings and relationships and just all aspects of life. That hesitation was creating this time gap where I was missing opportunities, and they were all they could be large opportunities or very small, just relationship opportunities to get to know somebody better or just get a deeper whatever understanding and connection with that person. But enough of those add up over time, and it becomes a very heavy weight to carry around. So there was a cost to not being better at listening to, I have this impulse to speak up now. And I think you noticed that in a couple meetings this morning. I just jumped in.
You did. I was cheering because you were saying what I was thinking. And I was like, yes, keep going. And which is a great example, because I was on the other end, not following my intuition and not making a choice that wasn't a conscious choice. I was very much in reaction mode, and it really ate up at me. And so it helped that you were taking and saying what I wasn't, because then I could release the judgment of my own lack of conscious choice.
And it was in the situation we were in, it was entirely understandable to have the conflicts you were having that might not have made it easy to jump into conscious choice. At that time, for me, I was leaning on a value that had sprung up so strongly over the last week of wanting to provide some kind of support and feeling like we could do something, that I was ignoring a lot of other impulses that absolutely would drive conscious choice under different circumstances. There was just enough weight. But that's a good example then for this, like listening to that intuition, because I'm glad to have said that then, because it was, that felt necessary. That felt like I was glad that was the thing to say.
Yeah. Well, and it's excellent awareness how you connected it to your own values. Your values were speaking very loudly to you. And so that gave you that courage and that vulnerability to say what needed to be said. Very much what needed to be said.
That's, I think, honestly, the best part about leaning into your intuition, is because your intuition is almost always speaking from your values. So when you do listen to it, you're making like this connected choice to you, and man, like it feels good, and you don't feel insecure about the choice you're making. You don't feel worried about it, because it is an expression of you and what you value, what you at your core value. And that's not something that is always easy to come by. There's 1,000 ways that we grow up, and society tells us not to listen to those things, and work tells us not to listen to those things. But man, the few times that I've been getting much better in the last couple of months at just doing that, it's incredible how much better the decisions feel, and how much easier it is to commit to them, and how much, like, if consequences come up, you're like, okay, but I'll work with those consequences. That's fine. Like, it's not about that delivers a perfect result every time. It's just that, like, I'm glad I made that choice, and here's the next things to do. And okay, so that might have created some a consequence I wasn't expecting, and I'd rather be facing that.
Definitely. Yeah, that's excellent. To kind of go through the whole cycles of the intuition doesn't mean that there's no consequences. That's not what it is. It just means that the consequences are also much easier to deal with when they come around, because it was based on values. It was based on a deep choice that you made, instead of a reaction made because of external or internal drivers.
Yeah. And that's where you can go rely on your head and heart to go get you out of those ones. Like, great, there's consequences. Okay, start thinking about those. There's another conscious choice to be made. Your intuition probably already has a new hit for you. Like, then you use your heart and your head to go dig yourself out of that and make that choice.
Yeah, definitely. So when you think about what helped you in the last few years and in the last few months to really harness that understanding the intuition and understanding the values and choosing, subconsciously choosing to act and to respond according to it. What space helps you get there?
The like screaming intuitive answer coming out of me on that one is acceptance and self-compassion, and compassion in general. Actually, it's not just even self, it's entering that compassionate space where you have that curiosity for yourself and others. And the acceptance portion has been game changing for me when I think about addressing like my own personal struggles against like perfectionism and wanting to do everything right. And once I got into acceptance of like that you can be imperfect and that you can still speak up and that you can still, it's not all or nothing. You either do everything well, or you can accept every, lick of blame that comes the other way. And understanding that there's nuance in that, and accepting myself for not doing all the things perfectly and being okay with that. And that's why I say compassion as well, because that was being able to accept that and be like, yeah, this is who I am. This is where there's things I might want to change. There's things I might want to address. I can do that. I know I've made other changes before. Getting into that acceptance space was the biggest shifter to get into. And that's what I always kind of go back to nowadays. I tend to find that I'm fighting some level of acceptance when I'm not living in that intuition, or I'm not in that space. And I can notice more easily, like, I'm not accepting something. Something's still high friction.
Yeah, that's fascinating, especially the connection to the acceptance piece as the foundation of getting to conscious choice, and where conscious choice fights back, and where the friction is born from. So crossroad, conscious choice for you. We could dig deeper on acceptance itself and what situations may be lacking acceptance, or we can let our listeners go.
I think on this one, we can let the listeners go, since we did acceptance last week.
We did, yes.
But it is a good reminder that, and definitely for me, while I agree with you that the conscious choice is one of my favorite ones, the one that's been most powerful for me in my life in the last couple months has been acceptance, for sure. And it ties in so strongly with conscious choice. It's so much easier to be making these conscious choices when you live in greater acceptance. So just to really punch that button, which I think we hit a lot last time, but just to punch that one again, it really, like, it has made a tremendous difference in how I approach things.
Yeah, very, very well said. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for digging into the head and the heart and what's happening there, and how to follow one or the other, or which function each has. Almost, it's like a follow the heart, but use the head to figure things out.
Yeah, I think it's a valuable moniker I'm going to start using more. So the more I think about it, the more I'm like, what is the head here for, if not that? If it's not there to help us address the things we deeply actually are looking for.
True.
But yeah, and thanks for listening to the laundry room of washing machines. That is my head.
The laundry room of laundry lists. Yeah, definitely.
1,757.
Yes.
Washing machines.
There probably are about 1,757 washing machines going on in our heads.
Makes it fun.
Yes, it does. Well, thanks for
loud.
listening. Trust the process is next.
Yeah,
so looking forward to that one.
All right, talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening.